You saw the bat in your porch light last night, that fast, jittery shadow cutting across the yard, and your first thought was to get rid of it. I know, because that was my first thought too. For years. Here is the truth I wish someone had told me sooner. That one bat over your garden is worth more than any pesticide you will ever buy, and killing it costs you money every single season. I did it the expensive way for the better part of a decade. Sprays, zappers, foggers, traps. My eyes finally opened one humid July evening when I counted what was actually happening above my tomato plants. Stay with me, because near the end I am going to show you a forgotten document from 1925, written by a Texas doctor, that lays out exactly how to turn bats into free labor for your yard. And this works whether you have 2 acres or a tiny fenced-in patch behind a townhouse. You do not need to start over. You start with the yard you already have. Let me take you back to the yard I used to have, and the mess I made of it. I grew up believing bats were flying rats, dirty, dangerous, something you chased out of the barn with a broom. So when I bought my first house with a real backyard, I treated every bat like an invader. I strung up one of those blue electric bug zappers on the fence. I felt clever every time it crackled. I thought I was winning. I was not winning. I was losing, and I did not even know the scoreboard existed. Here is what nobody told me. Those blue zappers barely kill mosquitoes at all. A study out of the University of Delaware looked at what actually died in backyard zappers over an entire summer. They counted almost 14,000 insects. Do you want to know how many were biting mosquitoes or gnats? Less than 0.25%. Almost everything that fried in that light was harmless. Moths, beetles, lacewings, a lot of them were the very insects that eat garden pests. I was electrocuting my own helpers and paying for the electricity to do it. Meanwhile, the mosquitoes were thicker every year. I would come inside covered in bites, scratching my ankles, blaming the weather. I bought citronella candles by the case. I bought a propane fogger for $40 and refills that never seemed to end. Some summers I spent well over $200 just trying to sit on my own patio. And the whole time, the answer was flying right over my head. Literally, because here's the number that stopped me cold when I finally read it. A single little brown bat can eat up to 1,000 mosquito-sized insects in 1 hour. In 1 hour. On a good summer night, that same bat will hunt for 6 or 7 hours. Multiply that out. One bat can clear 6,000 or 7,000 insects from the air above your yard in a single evening, and it asks nothing from you in return. No refills, no batteries, no $40 propane tanks. I had been killing my best mosquito control with a broom and a blue light. Now let me tell you about the night everything changed, because this is the moment I actually became a different gardener. It was mid-July, and I was standing by my back door with a citronella candle guttering on the rail. I was watching my zapper snap and pop like always. But that night I actually looked up past it. There were 3 bats working the air over my garden, swooping in long, lazy arcs around the porch light. And I noticed something. Right under the porch light, where the bats were hunting hardest, I had almost no mosquitoes on me. The bites were coming from the far corner of the yard, the dark corner, where the bats did not bother to go because there was nothing to hunt in the shadows. The bats were already protecting the part of the yard they could see. I just had never given them a reason to protect the rest of it. Somewhere in the last 70 years, we were quietly taught to fear the exact creatures that used to be a farmer's most trusted partner. The pest control industry in this country grew into a business worth billions of dollars a year, and you cannot sell a man a monthly spray subscription if he already has a colony of bats doing the same job for nothing. It was never in anyone's interest to remind you that the animal you are afraid of is the cheapest pest control ever invented. I am not telling you there was some grand meeting where they decided to make us hate bats. I am telling you something simpler and worse. Nobody had a reason to defend the bat. There was no company selling bats. There was no advertisement for the free thing. So the free thing got forgotten and the expensive thing got a jingle. That is how good knowledge dies. Not because it stops working, because nobody profits from reminding you. And the cost of that forgetting is enormous. Let me give you the biggest number in this whole story. In 2011, 4 scientists published a study in the journal Science. The lead researcher was Justin Boyles, and he worked with the United States Geological Survey and the University of Pretoria. They sat down and calculated what bats are actually worth to agriculture in the United States just by eating insects that would otherwise destroy crops or require pesticides. Their estimate, somewhere between $3.7 billion and $53 billion every single year. Billion with a B. That is the value of the free labor flying over American farms and gardens right now, mostly unnoticed and often killed. When I read that number, I thought about my little backyard. If bats are worth billions to farmers, what were mine worth to me? And what had I thrown away by treating them as the enemy? So I set out to actually work with them instead of against them. And that is where the story stops being about my mistakes and starts being about what finally worked. The first thing I had to understand was what bats actually eat, because it turns out it is not just mosquitoes. That was the part that truly shocked me. I always thought of bats as mosquito hunters and nothing more, but when I dug into the research from the Extension Services, I found that bats are hunting the very pests that had been wrecking my vegetable garden for years. There is a species called the big brown bat, common across most of North America, and it has a real appetite for beetles. Cucumber beetles, June beetles, stink bugs, leaf-eating moths whose caterpillars strip your greens to the stem. There was a scientist named John Whitaker who studied the diet of big brown bats in Indiana. He found that a single colony of 150 big brown bats eats enough adult cucumber beetles in one summer to prevent those beetles from laying roughly 33 million eggs. 33 million. Those eggs would have become rootworms. Rootworms are the larvae that chew through the roots of corn and squash and cucumbers underground, where you cannot even reach them with a spray. I had been fighting those beetles by hand for years, picking them off leaves in the morning, buying yellow sticky traps, dusting my plants with powders that washed off in the first rain. And a colony of bats would have handled the whole problem in the dark while I slept, for free. Think about the moths, too. Every gardener knows the heartbreak of finding your cabbage or your kale riddled with holes. Those holes come from caterpillars. Those caterpillars hatch from eggs laid by night-flying moths. And what hunts night-flying moths above your garden? Bats. When you kill the bats, or scare them off, or never invite them in, you are letting every one of those moths lay her eggs in peace. You are choosing the caterpillars over the thing that eats the moth. Once I understood that, I could not unsee it. Every bat I had ever chased away was a month of pest control I had thrown in the trash. But eating pests is only half of what a bat gives you. The other half is something I never even considered, and it might be the most valuable thing of all. Let me ask you something. What do you think happens after a bat eats 7,000 insects in a night? It has to leave that somewhere. And where it leaves, it turns out to be one of the finest natural fertilizers on Earth. It is called bat guano. And for most of human history, people did not chase bats away from it. They fought wars over it. I am not exaggerating. In the 1800s, bat and seabird guano was so valuable as fertilizer that the United States passed an actual law about it, the Guano Islands Act of 1856. It allowed American citizens to claim any unclaimed island in the world that had guano deposits on it. Under that law, the United States laid claim to dozens of islands. Men sailed across oceans and dug in the heat and the stench for this stuff because it made crops explode out of the ground. That is how badly the old world wanted what my bats were dropping on my shed roof for free. The reason guano works so well is the numbers on it. Bat guano is extremely high in nitrogen, which drives green leafy growth, and it carries phosphorus for strong roots and flowers, plus potassium. But it does something bagged chemical fertilizer cannot do. Because guano comes from digested insects, it is loaded with living microbes that feed the soil itself. It does not just feed the plant, it rebuilds the ground the plant grows in. I remember standing in a garden center looking at a small bag of bat guano fertilizer, priced at nearly $20 for a couple of pounds. $20. And I laughed out loud right there in the aisle. Because a healthy bat colony over my garden would produce that much and more and drop it right where I needed it and never send me a bill. So now I had the full picture. A bat over my yard was three things at once: a mosquito trap that never needs refilling, a beetle patrol that works the night shift underground where I cannot, and a slow, steady supply of the same fertilizer men once crossed oceans to steal. And I had spent a decade trying to get rid of all three. The question that kept me up was simple: how do I get more of them, and how do I keep the ones I have? And this is where I need to talk directly to those of you who are thinking this is all fine for someone with a big rural property, but not for you. Maybe you are watching this in a modest yard in a subdivision. Maybe you have neighbors close on both sides. Maybe you rent and you cannot go changing the land. I want you to hear me clearly, because this next part is built specifically for you, for the exact yard you are sitting in right now with the things you already own. You do not need acreage. You do not need a barn. You do not need to buy anything expensive or hire anyone. The single most powerful thing you can do to invite bats costs nothing, and I overlooked it for years because it was too simple to believe: water. Bats need to drink. And here is the remarkable part about how they do it. A bat cannot land and sip like a bird. It drinks on the wing, swooping down and skimming its lower jaw across the surface of the water while still flying. To do that, it needs an open, unobstructed stretch of still water it can approach in a straight line. And bats, being creatures of habit, will return night after night to a reliable water source, and they will hunt the insects all around it while they are there. That was the crack in the wall. That was the night I started reading everything I could find. And what I found made me angry, because this knowledge was not new. It was old. It had simply been buried under decades of people selling me the complicated version of a problem that nature solves for free. If this way of thinking speaks to you, recovering the old, practical answers that actually work instead of buying the expensive replacement, I put the deeper framework into a book. It is called First Fixes, and it goes through exactly how to identify the free or nearly free solutions hiding in plain sight in your yard and your garden before you spend a single dollar on a product. There is also Deep Leverage, which looks at the small changes that multiply results across a whole season, and the Full Stack, which brings all of it together into a complete system. All three are listed in the description below. If you want the long version of what I am only able to sketch out here, that is where you will find it. Here is where it gets uncomfortable, and here is where I have to name what really happened. So if you have any container that holds water, an old bird bath, a shallow kiddie pool, a large plant saucer, a galvanized tub, set it out in the most open part of your yard, away from fences and bushes that would block a low, straight approach. Keep it filled. Keep it clean. That is it. You have just built a bat watering hole with something you already own, and where the bats come to drink, they will stay to hunt. The second free thing you can do tonight is stop doing something. Turn off the harsh white floodlights that blast your whole yard. Bats are shy of bright, broad light, and worse, Bright light scatters the insects and lets predators see the bats. But a single dim, warm porch light does the opposite. It draws moths and mosquitoes into a tight column of air, and the bats learn that your porch is a buffet. I switched my glaring white security floods for one soft, warm bulb by the door, and within 2 weeks I had bats working that light like clockwork every dusk. The third thing, and this is the one that surprised me most, is to leave a corner of your yard a little wild and a little imperfect. Not the whole yard, just a corner. Let a small patch grow taller. Let a dead branch stay on a tree if it is safe. Plant a few night-blooming, pale-colored flowers if you can, because they open at dusk and release scent that pulls in the night moths. Evening primrose, nicotiana, moonflower. The moths come for the flowers, and the bats come for the moths. You are setting a table. None of that requires money. None of that requires a landlord's permission in most cases. None of that requires you to be an expert. You are simply making your yard a place a bat wants to be, using water you already have, a light bulb you already own, and a corner you were probably mowing for no reason anyway. But there is one more step, and it is the step that turns visitors into residents. And this is where I have to bring you the buried document I promised you at the start, because giving bats a place to hunt and drink is good. Giving them a place to live is what changes everything. And a Texas doctor figured out exactly how to do that more than 100 years ago, and then we forgot him almost completely. His name was Dr. Charles A.R. Campbell. He was a physician in San Antonio, Texas, in the early 1900s, back when malaria carried by mosquitoes was killing people across the American South. Campbell had an idea that his colleagues thought was insane. If mosquitoes spread the disease and bats eat mosquitoes, then instead of poisoning the water, why not raise an army of bats? So he built what he called bat roosts, enormous wooden towers, designed from careful study of exactly how bats like to hang, how much space they need, how warm they need to be, and how they enter and exit. He experimented for years. His first attempts failed. The bats would not move in. He did not give up. He kept adjusting the design until, finally, he built a tower near a mosquito-infested lake, and the bats came, and they stayed by the thousands. And the results were so dramatic that the malaria cases in the area around his towers dropped sharply. The bats were eating the mosquitoes faster than the mosquitoes could breed. Campbell was nominated for a Nobel Prize for this work. In 1925, he published a book laying out everything he had learned, and the title alone tells you he understood exactly what he had found. He called it Bats, Mosquitoes, and Dollars. Dollars because Campbell had also discovered the second harvest. Under his bat towers, the guano piled up, and he collected it and sold it as premium fertilizer, and it paid for the towers many times over. He had built a machine that ate the disease-carrying insects for free and then produced valuable fertilizer as a byproduct. 100 years ago, and most people alive today have never heard his name. One of Campbell's bat towers still stands near San Antonio to this day. It has outlived the man, outlived the fashion for chemical sprays that replaced it, and it is still exactly right. We did not fail to solve the bat problem. We solved it a century ago, and then let the solution rot while we bought the expensive version. Now here is the part I have been building toward. The part where I hand you Campbell's discovery in a form you can actually use this weekend in your own yard without building a 30-foot tower. Because the modern version of Campbell's tower is the simple bat house. A flat wooden box you mount on a pole or the side of a building. But almost everyone who buys one online makes the same 3 mistakes that guarantee no bat will ever move in, and I made every one of them. I bought a cute little bat house, nailed it to a shady tree, and waited 2 years for nothing. It stayed empty because I had gotten every detail wrong. Campbell's own research, confirmed by modern bat biologists at organizations like Bat Conservation International, tells you exactly why. Here is the secret that makes a bat house actually work, and it is nothing like what the packaging tells you. First, the temperature. This is the one everybody gets wrong. Bat houses must be hot. Mother bats need a nursery that stays warm, between 80 and 100 degrees Fahrenheit through the day, to raise their pups. That means you do not hang the house in the shade to be kind. You mount it in full sun, where it gets at least 6 hours of direct sunlight a day. And in most of the country you paint it a dark color, dark brown or even black, so it soaks up heat. The house on the shady tree was doomed before I hammered the first nail. Second, the height. A bat house needs to be mounted high, at least 12 to 15 feet off the ground, because bats drop downward into flight when they leave and they need clearance. Low is empty, high is home. Third, the location. Do not mount it on a tree. Trees give predators like owls and snakes a path right to the roost, and branches block the bat's approach. The best spot is the side of a building or a dedicated pole, out in the open, ideally facing south or southeast to catch the morning sun, and within a quarter-mile of a water source. Remember that bird bath you put out. Now it works together with the house. Get those 3 things right. Full hot sun, painted dark, 12 to 15 feet high, on a pole or a wall, near water. That is the whole secret. That is Campbell's 100-year-old research boiled down to a Saturday afternoon project. You can build the box from a single scrap of untreated wood, or buy a properly designed one. But if you get the placement right, you are not hoping for bats anymore. You are recruiting them. And once a colony moves in, everything I have described starts happening automatically. The mosquitoes over your patio thin out. The beetles in your vegetable beds get hunted in the dark. And under that house, slowly, a small pile of the fertilizer men once crossed oceans for begins to build, yours for the taking, dropped right where you need it. Let me tell you what my yard looks like now, so you know this is not just theory. I have not bought a propane fogger refill in 4 years. I threw the blue zapper in the trash where it belonged. My warm porch light comes on at dusk, and within 20 minutes the bats arrive like they punch a clock. I sit on that patio on July evenings now, the same patio that used to leave me scratching bites for an hour, and I barely get touched. My cucumber plants are not lace anymore, and twice a year I scrape a little dark gold from under the bat house and work it into my tomato beds, and those tomatoes come up like something out of a story. It cost me almost nothing. A bird bath I already had, a change of light bulb, a wooden box in the sun, and the willingness to stop being afraid of the most useful animal that ever visited my yard. I want to be honest about one more thing, because you may be worried about it, and I was too. The fear of disease. Yes, you should never handle a bat with bare hands, and if one ever gets inside your house, you should call animal control rather than touch it, and that is simple common sense. But a bat flying over your garden, hunting insects 30 feet in the air, poses you no more danger than a robin does. The risk is in handling them, not in hosting them. You are not inviting anything into your home. You are giving a wild animal a place to work outdoors, at night, while you sleep. That is all. When I finally understood that, I felt something close to grief. Grief for all the years I fought the very thing that would have saved me money, saved me the itching, saved my vegetables, and fed my soil. I had been sold a hard, expensive version of a problem that a Texas doctor solved gently and cheaply before my grandparents were born. Here is what I want you to carry away from all of this. That flickering shadow over your yard at dusk is not a nuisance you have to tolerate. It is a partner you almost turned away. It is free mosquito control, free pest patrol, and free fertilizer, all in one small flying animal that asks for nothing but a warm box and a sip of water. We were taught to fear it because no one could sell it to us. But you know better now. If you are the kind of person who would rather trust 100 years of proven common sense than a shelf full of overpriced sprays, then this was never really about bats. It is about taking back the simple, cheap, reliable answers that got buried so someone could sell you the complicated ones. You just recovered one of them. So let me ask you this, and I really do want you to tell me, when you finish watching, look back on your own yard. Have you ever put up one of those blue zappers, the way I did, thinking you were helping? Or have you already seen the bats working your porch light at night and just never realized what they were worth? Tell me in the comments which one is you. And tell me where you are watching from, because I am genuinely curious how many different places these little night workers are showing up. Leave that comment. This audience is quiet, and I am asking you directly to speak up, because your story might be the thing that saves the next person a decade of mistakes like mine. And if you want more of this, the old buried answers that actually work, come along with the rest of us who are digging them back up one by one. Because next I am going to show you something about the common wood ash from your fireplace, and a use for it in the garden that our great-grandparents relied on, and that we were quietly told to forget. You are going to want to hear that one before spring. I will see you there. You saw how much these little creatures do for your yard. Right where this video stopped, I keep going, inside the Old Ways Almanac, and you can ask me your own question. A real person answers you. Myself. You'd be joining Old Ways folks just like you, where you belong. Point your phone's camera at the code on your screen, and you can cancel any time with one click.